Every July for the last 3 years, I hit a very predictable reading slump. Each and every time this happens, I get surprised, which is in and of itself surprising because I literally have the data to prove that I go in cycles. Regardless, no matter how much my reading drops off and I feel like I will never pick up a book again, I always do. So if you're in the mood for a recommendation and you want some short books, I've got you. I'm dividing my recommendations by closest genre, so whether you're a romance, lit fic, or contemporary reader, I've got something for your tastes. If you want to watch by genre, I will have timestamps on this video, but there are a lot of books that are cross-genre, so I have books that are historical fiction and romance, or classics and romance, etc. Also, almost half of the recommendations I'll be giving today are in translation, so if you're looking to diversify your reads a little bit, then I've got you. Bear with me, I filmed this on 2 separate days, so I have clips that are different lighting, different outfits, but I think when I go through this, I'm going to start with magical realism. The next category is magical realism, where I have After Dark by Haruki Murakami, translated from Japanese. After Dark is set in Tokyo and takes place over one night between midnight and dawn. The book switches between 2 point of views, one focusing on a sister who is in a deep slumber, in a dream state, and another who is led through Tokyo and meets other people of the night. This includes a jazz player, a love hotel manager and maids, and a prostitute who is brutalized by businessmen. It becomes evident as the story goes on that these people are drawn together by the night. The slumbering sister is directly tied to the businessman's sense of guilt, which will ultimately impact the result of her slumber. This was one of the first literary fiction books I read, and the first one with magical realism. And I've talked about Murakami before, and his writing just always astounds me with the level of detail and intricacy. This is another really weird book, but his writing style just never ceases to impress me. And even to this day, I feel like After Dark by Haruki Murakami is a book unlike any other that I've read before. Next, with classics, I have Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. In 1950s Paris, an American expat proposes to his girlfriend before she leaves for a trip. While his girlfriend is on the trip, he meets a bartender named Giovanni, and they end up being drawn together and they spend days in Giovanni's room. I have nothing more to say about Giovanni's Room that hasn't already been said. I think that James Baldwin is a phenomenal writer, and Giovanni's Room is a great place to start. Next is The Stranger by Albert Camus, which is translated from French. I feel like over the past year, The Stranger has been portrayed a lot on social media, but if you haven't read it yet, The Stranger is about a man who commits a senseless murder, and that's kind of it. There really isn't any other major plot point. I think this book is best for people who want to dip their toes into philosophy and maybe see where the roots of absurdism come from. By nature, it ends up being a novel that a lot of people view as boring, monotonous, or apathetic. But I enjoyed the writing, and I found the ideas of absurdism really interesting as something that I've never really approached before. Next, in the psychological horror section, I have The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. The Yellow Wallpaper is regarded as one of the most important works for early feminist literature in America. A woman's husband, who is a physician, confines her to a room in a mansion that he's rented over the summer to simply rest, exercise, and get fresh air. This is a treatment for what he calls temporary nervous depression, except for the fact that she keeps a journal during this time, and that is what ends up being how the story is written. As time passes, she falls into a psychosis and ends up becoming obsessed with the yellow wallpaper around her and the pattern in the wallpaper. This is a captivating story of postpartum depression and really exemplifies the ways that women were mistreated, misdiagnosed, and just generally treated in a society that views women as less than. Lastly, in my poetry section, I want to talk about Night Sky with Exit Wounds by Ocean Vuong. This has to be one of my all-time favorite poetry collections, if not my favorite poetry collection. Vuong examines his culture, collective cultural memory, and his personal loss. And personally, it's my favorite poetry collection of his. I've also read Time as a Mother, but I think it would be easier and better for most people to start with Night Sky with Exit Wounds. And lastly, I have both Felicity and 1,000 Mornings by Mary Oliver. For me, Mary Oliver is just such a comforting writer. She writes a lot in 1,000 Mornings about nature and human connection with nature and her specific connection to her hometown. I think a lot of Mary Oliver's work is just a reminder that we are always connected to life, that we are living creatures, the world is living, nature is living, and we all work in tandem, and it's just really comforting to read her writing. Felicity is my favorite of the 2 poetry collections. It talks about love and what it really means to love another person. It really delves into the wonder of human connection and the joy that comes with loving something. I'm going to start off with contemporary and literary fiction, which are my 2 most read genres. Firstly, I have Greek Lessons by Hong Kong, which is translated from Korean. In So, a Korean woman hasn't spoken in many years and chooses to take a Greek language course. The Greek language teacher finds himself drawn to her while simultaneously losing his sight. It's such an emotional book that explores connection through anguish and the intimacy and humanity of being alive. Next is Winter in Sokcho by Elisa Shua dusapin and is translated from French. Winter in Sokcho follows a Korean-French narrator who lives in Sokcho, a small coastal Korean town near the border. She still lives there because of her mother, and it feels like she's going through the motions. She works effectively at a guest house when a French comic writer shows up, and they find themselves inexplicably drawn together. He's sort of reclusive and is looking for inspiration for his next comic, but there's a lot of distance between the two. I wouldn't say this is really a romance, and I wouldn't read it for that aspect. There's great commentary on what it means to understand someone, cross-cultural comprehension, and what it means to live a meaningful life. It really is a slow book in the way that it made me feel like time was slowing down. It's definitely more vibes than plot. Next is Foster by Keegan, which follows a young Irish girl who is sent to live in the countryside while her mother gives birth over a summer. Her family is overwhelmed and unable or unwilling to care for her during the summer. At this farm, she experiences love, care, and connection that she has never known, and this is by far my favorite work of Keegan. It's 90 pages, and it's really stuck with me. Next is The Details by Genberg, translated from Swedish. The Details is a fever dream of a novel. It explores the narrator's past through her previous relationships and friendships. I think what I liked most about this book is that it really delves into the question of who we are. How even when friendships pass and relationships move on through unresolved emotions and uncertainty, those people are still a part of us, a part of our history. The blurb includes the line, "Who is the real subject of a portrait? The person being painted or the one holding the brush?" And I think that about sums up this book. Next for romance, I have Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hiromi Kawakami, translated from Japanese. As with Greek Lessons, I was unsure whether to put this in the litfic and contemporary section or romance, but I think this has a much stronger romance plot. I never really hear anyone talk about this book, and I hadn't heard of it until I was gifted it, but it's about Tsushiko, a woman in her late 30s who meets her former high school teacher who is 30 years her senior. After an initial encounter, they meet unexpectedly but occasionally to eat food and drink sake as the seasons pass. And it turns into this awkward intimacy. It's sort of a strange book, but I find myself wanting to return to it and reread it. Next is The Red Notebook by Antoine Laurain, translated from French. A Parisian bookseller finds a bag only containing a red notebook. As he reads through the thoughts and handwritten notes, he decides that he wants to meet the person who has written the notebook. I thought it was a cute quest story with a lot of charm, and it was good for getting me back into reading. Next, in my historical fiction category, I have Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jedrowski. This is one of my favorite books on this list, one of my favorite books of all time. It's 190 pages, but I still think it deserves a spot. I read it in a day. It's set in 1980s Poland with the backdrop of communism and the Catholic Society. It centers around a love story about two young men who find themselves on the opposite of political divide after spending a summer together. It was heart-wrenching, so emotional, and so unbelievably well written. If you were to pick up any of these books, my bid would go to Swimming in the Dark. And that wraps it up. That's all I have to talk about in this video. Those are my 14 short books to read if you need to get out of a slump. I think that all of these have at some point in time helped me get out of a slump, or even if I'm out of a slump, they definitely help me read a lot more. I love all of the books that I've listed. I think that there's definitely something in here for every type of reader. So yeah, if you have any short book recommendations, leave them in the comments. And if you liked this video and watched it all the way through, drop a like, hit subscribe. I will be posting pretty regularly. I think my schedule is going to be about once every 2 weeks for long form videos, and then I'll be posting shorts here and there. So yeah, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you all next time.